Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. I'm looking at my cell phone and my computer, and they're two different times. We're about to be at 4 o'clock. My computer says 4, so welcome to our third and final series in our Pride series. My name is Alberto Nodal. I am co-chair of REAC. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am a bilingual kindergarten teacher in San Lorenzo. I am chair of the Hispanic Caucus, and I welcome you all to our Tuesday Takeover. As June comes to a close and Pride Month ends, it's important to remember that we show pride all year long. So welcome to our panel today. I'd like to start off with our panelists. And so I would ask them to please introduce themselves and let us know your name, your pronouns, your role in education, and how you identify. So we will start off with Z.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Z Wen. I am an ed special. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm an ed specialist and an English teacher at Sequoia High School in Redwood City in the Bay Area. My roles, other roles in education. I'm also a committee facilitator for our equity and diversity team. I am a graduate of the EMEID program as part of the CTA, which was fantastic experience. And I identify as queer. I am out at my school. I run the Gender and Sexuality Alliance at the school and run SOGI trainings, sorry, end of the day SOGI trainings at my school as well.
Perfect, thank you. Viridiana?
Hi everyone, my name is Viviana. I use she, her, ella pronouns. I'm an aspiring educator. I'm currently at UC Berkeley. I'm part of their BE3, so that's Berkeley Educators for Equity and Excellence. And I'm hoping to graduate with my master's and my multiple subject credential and my BCLAD next year. And I identify as bi. I have yet to fully come to what that means for me. But I'm still on that journey and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Angela?
Hey everyone, I'm Angela Normand. I am an education specialist. Most of my time has been spent in a middle school special day class. I'm currently out of the classroom serving as the CTA director for District C in Northern California, which is Alameda and Contra Costa counties and a little bit of Solano County. I identify as a proud Black lesbian. Old school term. I know. I think that's the whole purpose of today's discussion, getting different perspectives. And yeah, I guess we'll get more into it with further questions.
Perfect, thank you. Mark?
I'm an old person. That's so it took me a long time to unmute. I identify he, his, him. Um, I've been retired actually 10 years tomorrow, but for 40 years I was a speech pathologist, special ed teacher. I've also been active in CTA almost that entire time, and I've held numerous different positions, including chair of what used to be called SOGI, what used to be called GlibTIAC, or even before it was GlibTIAC. Take a few initials away from that. I identify as a gay, Jewish light male. and a senior, and as of last March, a disabled person. So, uh, yeah, that's part of my identities.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark. So, special welcome to all of our panelists. And now, before we start, I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. So, as we start off today's webinar, Tuesday Takeover, I'd like us to be present and think about the land that we currently occupy. The land that we are on is not our land, it's stolen land, and it belonged to indigenous and native people that lived here prior. So I currently am in Castro Valley, so I honor the land of the Ohlone, and I welcome you right now at this time in the chat if you'd like to honor the land of people whose land you're on currently. Thank you. Okay, so now we will start off with a few questions. The first question I'm going to ask is, which of the identities that you mentioned seem to be in conflict with one another or are harder to balance? How has your unique experience with these identities and intersections affect the way you move across the world? So I will begin first with Viridiana.
For me, I think one of my biggest conflicts within my identities is being an immigrant and a daughter of immigrants who came from a very, very small rural town in Mexico. And so, yeah, all of my family, I have never come out to them, but I've never felt like it would be something that they would be ashamed of or would look down on. It was just something that we just never talked about. And I don't know if I've ever feel like the need to say the words like, oh, I am this, especially as someone who's still trying to figure identities out and is constantly evolving within my own identity. So I think that's the biggest one like the biggest conflict for me. But my identities also impact how I'm moving across the world as an undocumented individual, someone who's also still a student educator. I will be student teaching while I'm still trying to figure out how I'll be able to bring that identity and all of my identities into the classroom without feeling like I'm going to be stepping on my cooperative teacher's toes, or that my school may not be super happy with if I do tell my students like, hey, I'm an undocumented person. I do have the privilege of having DACA, which is why I'm able to student teach. But will I be able to bring in that other identity of being bi and being open about that? If I defer to my partner as my partner instead of my boyfriend, or how he's cis het male, will that be an issue with people? Whereas our heteronormative, you know, normativity has defaulted to, if a straight person says, oh, my wife or my husband, no one bats an eye. But if they say my partner, or they say my wife or my husband, and they happen to be of the same gender, then it's an issue. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I think just all my identities are constantly present, especially as I'm going through this journey. And it's been over COVID where I really was like, okay, be honest with yourself. Like, straight people don't think, am I bi? Like, that's not something most people think about on a daily basis. And you were like, it's okay to be open. And my friends through Student CTA that I've made have made such an impact, because I've been able to talk to them about this. I've been able to just ask questions and not feel like I'm being judged for asking those questions. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. And for our audience, just to let you know, if you see me raise this is just kind of a little time check for our panelists so they know. So if you see, why is he randomly doing this? This just kind of means that we're going to move on to the next panelist. Okay, so next up, Angela.
Yeah, I think similar to Viridiana's experience, a lot earlier in my life. So there's no conflict now, but a lot earlier, being a lesbian in the Black community was not necessarily something that was completely embraced, especially by by family, etc. And so there was a that internal struggle to be proud of myself and all of the things that I had accomplished, yet not be able to live my life completely out and loud. Also, part of that was I spent 10 years in the Marine Corps at a time when homosexuality was considered conduct unbecoming. As a matter of fact, I had to answer questions in order to get in the Marine Corps, that said that I had to answer two questions: that I was not a homosexual and that I never participated in any homosexual activities. So so it's really nice to be living at a time right now where that can be a part of my past, and to see really how we as a society have really come a long way in the way that we are fully embracing the LGBTQ plus community. Just driving around the neighborhood, there are several schools in my area that are flying the pride flag. I mean, this was unheard of when it wasn't even a thought when I was in school. And so so it's just it feels really good to have been able to live through that conflict. And I think the way that this has these experiences with different identities have affected the way that I move as an educator. As a education specialist, our tagline is, once we make education better for the most marginalized, then everybody wins. And so I think that has really helped me as an educator to really fight for the rights of all students and be a safe space, a place where any and all can feel safe, embraced, loved, respected, heard, seen. Yeah, and yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Angela. Next up, Mark.
Like Angela, it's changed over the years. When I was first in school and education, it was scary being gay. I wasn't out. I was only out to like three people, and I certainly wasn't out to the school. When I was a senior student teaching, actually there was the first gay. It wasn't even called gay then. There was the first homosexual club at the university, and one of the founders was in the education college, and the Secretary of Education of Pennsylvania, where it was, personally took his credential away, made a big deal. It was in the paper. So I just kept quiet about it, and I was very nervous about it. And even when I started working, and my first real job was in California, you know, even then, when I had already been teaching for 5 years, they had the Briggs Initiative. So being gay and an educator was dangerous. It could have ruined my career. But, as the years went on, things changed. Like Angela said, there's pride flags on some of the schools, which I couldn't imagine, when I was in college. Um, yeah, mostly, luckily, I have white privilege. I pass as white and almost pass as straight. And, I managed to, get through those years without too much trouble. Although, um, I was called a fag by a couple of parents at a meeting once because, I guess my gayness was showing because of something I said. And but thanks to CTA and NEA and just the way the world evolved, there's no conflict at all anymore. So I think that's the question. Want to hold up to your sign?
Perfect. Thank you, Mark. Okay, Z.
I think I forgot to sort of add some of the important aspects of my identity when I was introducing myself, but I do identify as a queer woman of color. I'm a first generation Vietnamese American. My parents were refugees. And I think sort of some of the aspects of my identity that might have been in conflict in terms of like my education, in terms of being an educator, um, would be, I mean, I had to admit, I've been at Sequoia High School since 2006, and I had left for a few years. And coming back, there was a moment in which I had to decide, like, okay, am I going to do what all the other teachers do, where like I show pictures of my family and like, and just like be out? Or am I just going to sort of avoid that and like include things that like I'm into, traveling and my dog, and which I had done for a few years. And even coming into education in 2006, you know I think there's a degree that we all sort of have to make that decision at some point in our careers. And that was a hard choice. And I don't even remember when. Maybe it was like 2010 or something. It took me a few years where I was like, okay, I'm just gonna like put these pictures of my wedding in my introduction and talk about my wife, and let's just see how it goes. And it was, and it's great. Like these young people these days, for the most part, are just like way more accepting um, than I think we can be so fearful of, right? Like I think that sometimes more of that is like our colleagues and our parents and even sometimes the community. But our students are always just so amazing and loving and accepting. And even a few years ago, I decided to go by the gender neutral title Mix, MX, instead of Miss. And I was like, oh, how's this gonna go? Like, I'm a case manager, so I have students that are with me for years. And I was like, are they gonna be able to roll with it? Are, people going to like push back on it? And the students were like, oh, cool, okay, McSwen. And it wasn't a thing. Like they were just, I mean, some of them were like, what's that mean? And I explained, well, it's a gender neutral term. Like I identify as a woman and I'm cisgendered, but in terms of right titles, I always felt like as a feminist, I was like, I don't want to be defined by marital status. So that was something that came into my choice to go by the gender neutral title of MX. Um, I think so. I definitely sort of struggled to a degree with my sexuality and being out, and then coming then to like become the GSA advisor, really build the club, start trainings at my school, SOGI trainings, advocating for my students, and a lot more now. I think the issues that are coming up are around gender identity, um, and gender fluidity, and helping people understand that, and helping our districts and our schools really fully um, value, just uphold our both our identities as educators coming in. I'm seeing a lot more both non-binary and transgender educators and colleagues coming in, which I am so excited about. And then also, obviously, our students more and more coming through, identifying as non-binary or transgender. And I think that's sort of the next level of advocacy.
Perfect. Thank you. And it's interesting, as I heard each of you speak, it brought out things in my experience that I thought of. I remember when I was student teaching, there were two boys laughing at one of the books in the library that was called Daddy's New Roommate. And it was about a heterosexual couple that divorced, and dad realized he was gay, and it was from the child's perspective, saying, now I live with my dad and his new roommate, and we do everything together. And I remember them giggling. And I didn't know how to jump in as a student teacher. And I remember asking my cooperating teacher, like, this bothered me. What do I do? And so she had me read the book. A few weeks later, I read it as a read aloud, and we had a discussion. And it offered the opportunity for some students to say, I have two mothers. And it was a really rich dialogue in fifth grade. Um, and I remember when I started teaching, I didn't know, how do you navigate being out? It's like a comfort thing. Who would you rather be out to? So now I'm at a point where professionally, all of my colleagues know. Family wise, I don't express it to the families. Like, I feel like that's my life. If it comes up, it comes up, but I don't do anything. But like hearing about pictures, it reminded me, my boyfriend came to meet my kindergartners and talk about community helpers, and he works for an airline. And then a few months later, I showed them pictures of a trip I went on, and there was a picture of both of us, and my kid was like, wait, I know that's Mr. Harrison. Yeah, that's my friend. But why was Mr. Harrison there? And like not understanding, like, well, that's and that could have been an opportunity for me to say something, but it's just that, well, you could put two and two together. But I think one thing that for some families also plays into this is religion and navigating that. I teach bilingual kindergarten, so Spanish speaking Latino families. And I remember my first year teaching, having a mom come to me on the last day of school and say, when I met you, I thought, oh God, not him, not him. And then she wanted to invite me to her church. And so, and now my school district is one of those districts waving the flag. District wide, we chose to raise the pride flag, and it has caused some controversy on parents groups. But then there are other parents that are saying, thank you. We feel finally seen. I feel like this is a place that I want my child to go to. So it's interesting how we've evolved and where we've come. So, my next question is, in your opinion, what have been some of the biggest fights and victories in the LGBTQ plus community, and how have you been involved or impacted? So I'll start off with Angela.
Again, uh, I'm a little bit older than Viviana, so I like the way that these perspectives. Whoever put this panel together did a really great job as far as being able to really look at a variety of perspectives in the lived experiences of us all. So I just feel really fortunate to have been invited. So I really thank you for that. Um, Yeah, so some of the really big fights, I guess the first fight that I was exposed to was, you know, AIDS, and the fight for adequate health care. I've had several loved ones who passed away due to AIDS, and so that was really the first thing that really kind of put things into perspective as far as things are not equal, and there's a lot of hate, and there's a lot of folks who are really uneducated, who are in positions to make decisions that really have a horrible impact on some who you know, who really needed the help. And then the next thing would, I was in the, like I expressed, I was in the Marine Corps. So, you know, the switch from homosexuality being conduct unbecoming to don't ask, don't tell, to wherever it is now, where you know, like it's not even a thing. Being in that cross, when folks were not hiding who they were, and you know, as a Marine who at that point, you know, was supervisor, etc. And it's like, whoa, let me hear your perspective, because 7 years ago, like none of this would have gone down like this. And so that was just a really interesting time to serve in. Um, and then of course, as I was transitioning out of the Marine Corps, the world was transitioning into marriage for LGBTQ plus community. And that was, again, just something that was really eye opening. So that was around my return to the Bay Area, and uh, just being able to experience that, and to experience being part of a lot of my friends' partnerships and marriages. The transition from partnership to marriage for them was just really, again, a great time to be involved. And so the impact largely has been, you know, has been where as time progresses, we become better as a society and better as a people, and we get better people elected to positions who can make better decisions for the rest of the community. And so, you know, now, you know, as an elected official, there, I have no problem in being in running, even as an out you know, educator for my for I serve on the county board, Alameda County Board of Education. And so to be able to run in that perspective, and to have a community um, embrace me, not only for my ideals and my values, but also because I'm family. So that was so in all, it's a great time to be alive. And I see my pride flag.
Perfect. Thank you. Mark.
Um, well, I kind of, the first major thing was it almost was illegal to be a GLBT educator in the 70s. And actually, I think that actually helped to bring more and more people out, because I talked to my friends and I said, you know, if this thing passes, you know, I'm gone, you know, and there were others, of course, because there's quite a few of us in the education field. Um, again, as Angela said, the 80s brought the AIDS epidemic, and healthcare was uh, the major focus. And I was already involved in the local, um, in Oakland, in the local, and we were actually bargaining a new healthcare coverage, and I was going out and talking to teachers about the kind of coverage we wanted. And I still remember, even though it was, a lifetime ago, it seems, that one of them said, well, just drop all the gay teachers and save all the money you're going to have to spend on AIDS. And, actually, I remember very clearly he was sitting, it was an after school thing, and he was sitting on a windowsill. He doesn't know how close he came to being pushed out the window. So, in fact, one of the other teachers was with me, like said, I think it's time to go, because she saw the look in my eye. Um, um, but it, it was really tough going there for many years. And I lost, because of my age, I'm 70. So I lost half my friends. I lost my partner, I lost my best friend. Um, yeah. And, but it made me come out even more. I just couldn't be quiet. So I haven't been quiet since. Um, now, the next thing when it comes to healthcare was domestic partners started to be a issue. And when I was in Pittsburgh, I was the president, and they superintendent made that a major issue. We asked for that along with 30 other things in the contract, and he used that because he thought it would turn the public and the school board against us because we were asking for domestic partners. It sort of backfired on him. So, because somebody actually said in an interview on the radio, the superintendent's just mad because our president and our bargaining chair, who is Eric Hines, are gay, and that's what he's all upset about. And, she was holding the microphone that said CBS radio. And I thought, well, if I'm not out, I'm certainly out now. And what happened was it became state law 6 months later anyway. So it was, you know, he was fighting a losing cause. And, and then came marriage, which the day that the Supreme Court ruled on Prop 8, I was actually in Washington. And I just wish that some of my friends that are gone could have seen that day. So, yeah, those were the major things. But even in NEA and CTA, in NEA, we fought for history. We asked in the as NEA resolutions that along with Native American and women's history, there be LGBTQ history, and that was really controversial at the time. And some of those things, actually, at one time, we had to make a deal that we would demand less if they would form the NEA SOGI. There was a deal made that formed NEA SOGI behind closed doors. I'm now telling you that we dropped some of the things from resolutions and new business items if they would form SOGI. So some of us weren't very happy about that, including me, but it ended up that we got most of what we wanted in the long run. But yeah, we even had a fight within the union. So
Perfect. Thank you, Mark. Z.
I think I'm younger than Angela, so I think I was a little baby queer when Prop 8 was happening. I think I was like 14, and I ran around stealing the Prop 8 signs off of people's lawns. I grew up in San Jose, but somewhere between middle school and high school, my mom moved us to a tiny little um, conservative white town. So it was like the first time I experienced racism, I mean, like overt racism, and the first time I experienced very overt homophobia. I mean, I guess it started there. Growing up, I always liked girls, didn't really sort of know, have a term or phrase for it growing up um, in a Vietnamese immigrant community. Um, I think the community just never talked about it. And so coming into high school and sort of figuring out who I was and finding the terms and the words and the communities to fit that, you know, Prop 8 was sort of the beginning of that for me and my fight for, just my right to be who I was and for all of us to be who we were. Um, and in terms of, over the years, I think, seeing Prop 8 and DOMA get overturned. My wife and I got married, and I think maybe when Prop 8 was, what was that, 2013? Was that when Prop 8 got struck down first, second time? It's just like you lose track of these things. But I had this very, very distinct memory. I was teaching summer school, um, and we were think it was right before school was going to start, and I was like, you know what, I want to watch the Supreme Court, like the announcement. And so I turned it on, and as kids came into my classroom for summer school English or whatever it was, like they were just sitting there, and they all knew, they had met my wife. She comes in and like helps out in the classroom. um, and they all sat there and we watched the announcement, sort of the build up, um, the news going through the history of gay marriage and getting to this point. And it was really amazing just to watch like all the students like excited with me, and like I was crying and some of the students were crying, and like my wife called me on the phone and she was like, "Will you marry me?" And I was like, "Yes." Um, and again, right, like I just have to give so much props to young people being way ahead of us. And I'm starting to get closer to 40, so I'm feeling like I'm getting to old fogey age kind of thing. Um, so that's been such a big part of my growing up and my identity and my adulthood. As we are moving along, sort of we're seeing a lot of these laws, both, a step in the right direction and one step, two steps forward, one step back in terms of, um, access for our transgender youth, access to bathrooms, access to locker rooms, just like affirmation of their identities. And I, you know, I my work on my campus and at my district has been really trying to open that up, and getting those gender neutral bathrooms, educating our staff on what is gender identity versus sexual identity versus expression. And it's been a slow process, and I think we still have a lot that we need to do as we move forward. And that's some of the fights that I've been, just even simple things like, can we have a process in which a kid and their family, even if it's not legal, apply to have their name changed on, on all of the systems that we use. Like that was like, 7 years in the making. Like, I think those things are happening at different districts and different schools at different paces, unfortunately. And there are, bills that are getting passed that are slowly getting us all on the same page. And that's been my work over the last 10 years. So
Perfect. Thank you. Viviana.
Before I speak on my experience, I want to thank you all for sharing more of that history, because it's still not very talked about in classrooms. And a lot of these things, I'm like, oh yeah, that was something that was not just a given. And now I have those privileges of having all of those things because of those in the community before me. So thank you. Um, for me right now, I think what I've seen a lot of and what I really was not informed about for a long time was the amount of Black transgender women who are killed so often and murdered, and um, how they have just been extremely marginalized, even within the community. Um, and just learning more about that for me has been the biggest fight and the victory for myself, of that self knowledge. Because now that I'm knowledgeable, if I am to speak to somebody else about it, it's not just like a, yeah, I kind of heard about that. It's like, no, here are the facts, and like, let's talk about it. And another thing for myself as a bisexual human, identifying human, um, who has a male partner, I am, if I walk into a room, I am straight passing, as a woman identified person, and they, having a male partner does not devalue my identity. It doesn't erase my bisexual identity. And that was also something, I was kind of having issues with myself. Is like, am I really bisexual if I have a male partner? Um, it doesn't. It's another one of those internal fights, and it's something that I've noticed within the community as well. Um, that those who are in what we would normally see as heterosexual couples, and they might identify as bi or pan, so pansexual, and then bisexual being two or more gender. You're attracted to two or more genders. They're often kind of overlooked and just erased in a way, and which is really sad, because it's like we hear all the things that have been done in the past and all the struggles that people faced in order to even get to this point, and now we're doing it again. um, so, and I'm impacted because I've internalized it, to the point where I'm 25 and I'm just now like, yeah, that makes sense for me. This identity feels pretty good. Because I was like, oh, well, I've always, been with men, been attracted to men, but also with women. And then I was like, no, 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 you're, no, 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 no. You've internalized all of this uh, patriarchy and heteronormativity, um, and moving away from that, I think, has been the biggest victory as well. Because again, now if I'm having conversations with others in the community, you can have those conversations and talk about that. That is not only within society, but also within the community. Um, and I think I just am learning so much more, and that all of that, just like all your stories, like I was about to cry when Mark started speaking, and sharing, because I'm just like, wow, like that was someone, that was what they went through, and some folks still go through that now. But you are in a place where you don't have to, like you are in a house where if you were to tell your parents that you're bi, you're not going to be kicked out. You're going to be like met with open arms when I'm comfortable with telling them that. And that's another hope that I have for my future students, is that they can do the same with whatever it is that they feel comfortable with, and being okay with being their full selves and bringing their full selves into my classroom.
Thank you. And so it's interesting because as I heard you all speak, I hear the issue of representation and how that comes up in many facets, not only us as educators and us giving a face to the LGBTQ plus community, to our students, but also how we're seeing that spread. People running for office, as Angela said, county level, mayors, senators. I mean, seeing someone run for president. I mean, an openly gay male saying, I want to be the next president of the United States. Yeah, it caused some controversy having people see Pete kiss his husband, but hey, we're here, we're queer. I think of uh, the transgender community and how their story is finally being told in many ways, in movies, documentaries. I think of Pose and lifting this, not only the story of AIDS, but so many other things that many people don't know about. And I was born in 82, so I don't remember a lot of the stuff that happened then. I was young, I was going through being a kid. And so I give thanks to people like Mark, who paved the way within CTA and NEA. Who has the history to tell us about Glibtiak, and before it was Glibtiak, and all the different names in our timeline and stuff, to see how we've evolved to Sojiak and where we are today. And so I think we all thank you, and a huge thank you to all of our panelists for your different perspectives. Now, in the few minutes we have left, I'd like to see if anyone in the audience would like to ask any questions, or if our panelists have any thoughts now that we've all kind of spoken and heard all the questions. Anything you'd like to add on? Maybe a 1 minute. Oh, Mark, go for it.
Well, I think, I don't remember who said it, but we've come a long way, but we're still, there's anti-transgender stuff being passed in a whole bunch of states as we speak. And there's a chance of going backwards. This Supreme Court, I don't think, is very friendly. But I can't see them taking away everything we've gained, but they can chip away at some stuff. Yeah, it's scary, and I hope that people will step up and fight for the rights of everybody, including the transgender. I have to say, when I was started in the caucus, in the Glibtiak or whatever it was, it was called. We had a fight when we added the B to the G and the L. We had a fight when we added the T, even within our own community. Things are slow, but they're worth fighting for. What's right is right, and I hope that people will pick up the battle flag or whatever it is, and fight to make sure that we don't go backwards, and that we don't leave anybody out. As well, now the transgender uh, issue is really hot, and people are dying. So we have to defend our sisters and brothers and everybody who doesn't fit the norm. So that's my final words.
Definitely. Thank you, Mark. And yeah, it's important to realize It's not over. The fight still continues because sometimes we feel in California like, oh, I would say coming from the Bay Area, right? It's like, oh, we're diverse, people are open. Not everyone is. And I don't know what it's like to teach in a conservative area in the state. Now, our state does have a lot of allies and LGBTQ plus legislators and stuff like that that help with policies, but it's interesting when we go to the NEA representative assembly now that we're at this time right now that that's not what it's like in every state, and people still can be fired for being out or or anything, even teaching about things that go against what your state believes in. And so it's important definitely to continue the fight and, like Mark said, pick up the flag and keep going along with what those before you have done. Any of our other panelists like to add anything?
Yeah, as an aspiring educator, I would love to ask everyone who is a panelist and who's watching this maybe live or 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, to really support your aspiring educators on your site, and those, that you might meet at a conference, or an aspiring educator that you had a interaction with over social media or whatever that may be. Just to give them that support and let them know that like you're also there for them, because it is really daunting. Like I'm going to be new at my school site that I'm going to be teaching at, and I'm just like, who do I go to at the site to that I can just have conversations with that isn't necessarily my cooperative teacher? Who, like, where are my connections? And thankfully I do have some other folks that I can talk to outside of my school site, but just if you can make those quick little like, hey, I'm here for you, here's my email, here's my phone number, it does make a huge difference, especially if you're like some of you have said, an out educator. Like that is huge to have that person that you can go to and be like, hey, it's my first year, my first couple years, what did you do, how did you navigate this, I'm having this problem, did you have this, can you connect me with another educator that may have had a similar problem, because that really will change the experience of aspiring educators, like drastically.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Angela, anything you'd like to end with?
Just again a ton of appreciation for this forum. When the first committee that I was placed on once I got active in CTA was GlibTIAC, when it was still GlibTIAC, and so yeah, it just feels good to be at a place where Soji has taken over Takeover Tuesdays for Pride Month, and allowed us to share the story. So again, great work and thanks a lot.
Thank you. Z.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Angela noted. Just thank you so much for this space. You know, how important it is to recognize our history, where we've gotten where we are. And I think that's such a big part of June and Pride Month. And especially with this last couple of years, and just like 2020, Pride in June was just like so non-existent and depressing not to be able to come together and find community and connect and remember everything that we fight for and everything that we have to continue to fight for, and that we do this together and we do this as a community. And just like Mark said, that we need to remember that we are a community, that we have to move beyond sort of the infighting, but that this space, and continuing to have this space year after year, incorporated throughout our work throughout the year as well, is so important. So yeah, thank you so much for having me here, and for putting me on this panel with such a diverse experience. as well. And Viridiana, like you're down the street. You can definitely, I live in the Mission just down the hill from your school, and I totally know what you mean. Like when I made the decision just to like come out to my students, I didn't have, I mean, I had people I thought were gay on campus, but it's not an easy thing to be like, hey, I think you're gay. Like, how do you think I should? So yes, I totally want to support what you're saying is we really need to reach out to each other and reach out to, because you never know. Like I say similarly, I have some straight privilege as I move around in the world, unless I'm next to my wife who identifies as a dyke and very clearly is masculine of center. So you never know, like having those conversations and just inviting in new teachers is super important, and being open to have these conversations. I would have totally given you some awesome advice, and still can, about like how you might want to sort of, go through that process in your educational career. So thank you all again. I'm honored.
Of course. And thank you all to our panelists. And I think we may not have the answer to this question, but thinking of, we're all educators, how do we support our students, in particular those who are LGBTQ plus? And I think as educators, the first thing we can do is support them by talking to them, being that safe space for them to be able to come and talk to you and ask questions. And I think first and foremost, it's important to ask them, does your family know? Like it's never our position as educators to out students. And so let them know and ask questions to find out what they're comfortable with sharing. And again, it's not our job to get all this info out of them either. It's, what do you feel comfortable with sharing? If you want to, I'm here. I think the LGBTQ plus caucus has those safe space cards, which are awesome. And Mark is showing it right there. It's a great way to start a conversation. And so I teach kindergarten, so I'm glad I can put rainbows on everything in my classroom. It's like rainbows and clouds. And so if a student happens to ask a question, it's there. But I can also say, it's kindergarten, everything's rainbows. So I think that's one thing maybe you can do to start that conversation and let students know, maybe this is a safe person that I can talk to and disclose stuff. I think also, as we discussed, representation, be it in the curriculum that you're sharing, read alouds, people that are on your walls, people will see that. Posters, books that you have on your shelves. And so I think that's one thing. So as we close, thank you everybody for joining us in our Pride series. You see this flag raise and wave in June, but it waves all year long. And so we thank you for joining us. Thank you to our panelists. And if you'd like to access any of the past series of Takeover Tuesdays or Tuesday Takeovers, they will be on the CTA website. So thank you everyone for joining us. Oh, AC, Z, yes, please try. Use a student's name and pronouns even when you make mistakes. And I think that's definitely important. If we're not perfect, but we're here to learn and to grow. So thank you everyone. Happy Pride. Enjoy your summer, whatever you may be doing, and we hope to see you soon. Bye everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.